How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Elves Junction Reviews. Today we're looking at another product from Athearn's Ready to Roll line. We're looking at an Athearn Ready to Roll Electromotive Division SD40-2. This is number 6345, and this is part of their lease fleet. And as you can see here, it is in this lovely Athearn Ready to Roll box. And we're not going to waste any time, as he says DCC sound equipped, as well as Athearn's 75th anniversary. I hope everybody's having a good day today. I'm having an interesting morning. Got woken up by a large flock of crows, a murder of crows if you'd like. So inside our box we have a few things. We have our Econami, even though it's Tsunami 2, and this is our sound guide, so this will give us our functions as well as a few more interesting notices and facts about running the locomotive. And then we have our exploded diagram of the locomotive right here, so that'll be helpful in case something breaks on the locomotive and we need to order a new part to replace it. Alrighty, so there's a little poly bag full of spare parts here on the grip or lip of the clamshell. And as you can see, inside we have some little spare parts, including like another speed recorder right here, as you can see it. And there are 3 types of plows. Now I'm choosing to keep the plows off because I think it looks very interesting without the plows on. And there are some railroads that did not put plows on their locomotives because they saw that they didn't need to, because they either were in the flat plains of the Midwest where it didn't snow, or they would get rocks, or they were somewhere on the East Coast where they also didn't get snow, like say for instance down in Georgia or Florida, and they didn't have to worry about anything except for a little bit of rain. So anyway, let's get these foam sheets out. And this one doesn't want to cooperate. Alrighty. So, now with that out of the way, let's get on to some history. And now on to some history. Not only was EMD known for building locomotives, they also had a lease fleet of used ones. Power-short railroads could lease power on a short-term or long-term basis. Since the contracts would leave EMD to take care of maintenance, railroads could focus on other things, like running their railroad. These brightly painted locos could be found on just about every railroad. Now our locomotive here, EMDX 6345, was built in July of 1973 as Milwaukee Road 172. Eventually, the Milwaukee Road was sold to the Sioux Line, and the Sioux Line the Sioux Line turned this locomotive into Sioux Line 6345. The number still keeps. In the early 90s, it was sold back to EMD, repainted, but kept its original number here, 6345. In 2010, it was sold to NREX and kept the number again, and as of 2019, it has been sitting in storage. Now, that is as far as I know. But if anybody does know what has happened to this locomotive, after 2019, please let me know. All right, so now with history out of the way, let's get into some details, starting with the front. All right, looking at the front of the locomotive, and we're going to start at the top of the locomotive and work our way down to the bottom, as we usually do. Starting at the top, you can see our Leslie RS3L horn just above the headlight, which is right here. And here are the number boards next to the headlight that say 6345. They do not light up, which is unfortunate, but that's okay. It's a ready-to-roll locomotive. It doesn't need to be all this Genesis 2.0. It's designed for ready to roll. Anyway, moving on, we have 4 different windshields. One right here, one right there, another one here, and one right there as well. And as you can see, each windshield has a separately applied windshield wiper, one right here. These 2 are connected together, and then there's a separately applied one here. Here is the door to access the cab from the front of the locomotive. And as we focus on the nose, you can see the sand filler hatch right here, as well as the grab iron on the top of the nose. We have some plated over class lights from the Milwaukee Road days that are either side of the logo that says GM for General Motors. General Motors was the owner of Electromotive Division until it was sold to Progress Rail. Moving along here, we have 2 grab irons right here as well as right here. We have our ground light, which you can see right here. It does not light up, unfortunately. Moving on to the main pilot, and I just remembered there's a grab iron right there. Onto the pilot section, you can see the handrails, which are slightly bent inwards, which is very funky. We have an MU socket right here, as well as another one right there, as well as one more right here. Here's our coupler cut bar with its white handles on either side of the width of the locomotive. Here is our knuckle coupler right here, as well as 3 MU cables on either side of the knuckle and our air brake hose. Alrighty, so now let's look at some rear detail. Looking at the rear of the locomotive now, you can see the rear headlight, which operates when the locomotive is reversing. We have grab irons that lead from the top of the locomotive down to the walkway here. You can just see it, but there is the widthwise grab iron on the top of the locomotive, and you can also just see the sand filler hatch. We'll get a better view of that when we look at the top of the locomotive. We have our number boards, 6345 on either side, just below the headlight, and our plated over class lights once again. We have another grab iron right here on the right side of the locomotive, as well as our ground light as well. Moving on to the pilot section, as we focus on that, you can see it's basically the same as it is on the front of the locomotive. Our MU socket right here, as well as another one right here below it, as well as another MU socket, our coupler cup bar with its white handles, our knuckle right here, 3 MU cables on either side of the knuckle, and the air brake hose. And you can see the little holes that are for the plow if you wanted to install one on the rear of the locomotive. I just remembered that. All right, so now let's look at some side detail. Alrighty, so we're looking at the conductor's side of the locomotive. Right off the bat, you can see the white steps that lead up to the front walkway here. You can see the handrails are bent like out that way, which is very interesting indeed. We have a large white F to indicate this is the front of the locomotive, and directly behind that is the large white sill stripe that runs the length of the locomotive. You can see that sand filler hatch as well as the nose grab iron, right, a lot much better now. You can see the parking brake or hand brake, whichever you want to call it, right here. Moving along, you can see electromotive leasing as well as 6345, and you'll notice there are no sunshades on this locomotive, and there's a little firecracker antenna on top of the cab of the locomotive. The windows are there, you can just see them, but unfortunately they've slid out of their proper position, which is very annoying. I wish Athearn would not do that. Right behind the cab is the bell, as opposed to usually being down here by the fuel tank, which is very interesting indeed. This box right here is called the ECAFB. Now, I'm not sure what that is, so if anybody who knows locomotives better than I do, please let me know what that is in the comments down below. I would greatly appreciate your knowledge. We have our lovely truck detail. As it's ready to roll, not a lot of parts that jump out at you and make you really notice it, but that's okay. This is ready to roll. It's budget friendly. Moving along, we have our fuel tank right here, which is smaller than most fuel tanks. If I was to pull out my UP or my Santa Fe SD40s from the same run, you would notice that the fuel tank is a lot longer. Now, Milwaukee Road, this was a feature of their locomotives, that they had shorter fuel tanks on their locomotives. Now, I'm not sure what their reasoning for that was, but I guess it was to save money as well as save on fuel prices and such. It's pretty much blank all the way here on the locomotive, and you can see an air tank reservoir right here, excuse me. As we move the locomotive along, you can see the EMD logo along with electromotive. And you can see that widthwise grab iron right here as well. And there's a little illegible safety placard right here as well. All right. Oh, hold on, actually. It's pretty much the same on the, on the engineer's side, minus the blower. And there's a door right here to access the electrical compartment of the locomotive, and there's a lovely little window here for looking in to the locomotive. All right, so now let's look at some roof detail. Looking at the roof of the locomotive, on top of the cab here, you can see that Leslie RS3L horn right here, as well as the firecracker antenna in a much better way. Directly behind that is the dust bin, along with a little vent here, which is very nice. Here is the exhaust port. And as we move the locomotive along here, you can see the dynamic brake fans, as well as the housing, as well as the little vent for the dynamic brakes. And as we move along here, you can see the radiator fans right here, all 3 of them. They do have fans inside, but they're barely visible. Let's see if you can see them in there. Yep, you can just see them in there. There is that widthwise grab iron just behind the final radiator fan, and there is that sand filler hatch, which has been molded into the shell of the locomotive, which is very interesting indeed when you take a look at the nose one, which is a separately applied piece. All right, so now let's get into the sound demo. Alrighty, so we have the locomotive here up on the test track, so let's go ahead and put some power onto the track. So as you can hear, it is rather loud For me, that is. I don't know how loud it is for you guys in the video, but it is quite loud on my end. F0 is the main headlight, and unfortunately that's the only headlight we have. F1 is a bell. F2 is a longhorn. F3 is a short horn. Now F4 is dynamic brakes or straight to idle, but we won't be able to hear that in the 3 feet of track that we have here. F7 is a dimmer. And if you also heard it, it was also cab chatter. So I'm going to turn the locomotive back on, but I'm going to immediately hit the 7 key so you can hear some of that cab chatter as the locomotive's winding up. So here we go.
Detector, milepost 47.2, no defects. Repeat, no defects.
All right. And F8 is mute, so now you can actually hear me a lot better. Now, obviously, going into when you're programming this locomotive, you can turn its sound up or down. Most likely, the sound will be turned down on this locomotive so that you can hear the other features of the locomotive. So let's go ahead and move her out here. Let's put volume back on. And it's immediately derailed. That's not good. Oops. There we go. So now let's try this again. So what's going on is that the locomotive is not exactly happy with this test track, probably because it's very dirty. So let's try to get it back over here towards the camera. So what this means is no, the locomotive isn't faulty. It means that the test track is incredibly dirty. And this locomotive, I do not believe, has a keep alive function. I don't believe most Athearn locomotives do, but I could be wrong, let me know. But yeah, it just means I need to clean the test track and it should work fine later on at a later date. All right, so let's get into my final thoughts. So overall, I think this is a very good looking locomotive, especially since I paid just over $200 for it. Now, yes, there are a few issues with it, considering all the windows are slid out of their positions and that it's loud as heck, but that's nothing you can't fix. Both of those are very easily possible to fix, so I'm not going to take points off for that. But it's still a really good looking locomotive, regardless of those little problems that I had with it. But anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. Also subscribe if you have not, and hit that notification bell to see what I have to upload next. But thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye for now.